Hey, 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 we are live at 5, at least here on the East Coast of the U.S.
Damn it.
Why are you over there cursing on my YouTube live?
Because I saved the plate for lunch and forgot that I had it and then just got a new plate.
That happens all the time, by the way. Hey, ladies, popping on.
I'm going to go spend some dedicated learning time.
Yay. Is it school time?
Yep.
Bronson's off to study. Ooh, hey, Blaze. Hey, Liz, Kaya, Erin, Diane, hello. Come on in. Mary Grace, what up, what up? Reunited after a few hours. Maria, Dad, Susan, what is up? So good to have y'all here for the first Grace and Grind Tuesday live chat. Check-in time. Let me know how it's going. We're going to basically just be talking about Grace and Grind Challenge, the things that you have committed to doing, and how day 1 and 2 went for you so far. Some of y'all are not done with day 2. Some of y'all are already on day 3 on the other side of the world. I will give y'all, each week when we do these, I'll give you my check-in of what I've committed to doing and how my week has gone. Of course, we'll have a lot more to talk about after you have a whole week under your belt. But awesome. Blaze says, so far so good, right on track. I love it. Karen says, going good. Loved Mary Grace's post today. It was a very grace-oriented post. I should pull that up and read some of that. Actually, that's a perfect segue into the first topic. I only wrote really one note about a particular topic, although it may be kind of 2 or 3 topics in one, as they sometimes are. Some reflection or insights that I've had so far already that I definitely wanted to talk about today. But drop your comments. I see more comments coming in. So drop your insights, any aha moments yet. The aha moments in these kinds of challenges, the aha moments last year were so powerful. And that's really the biggest piece or the biggest part of the Grace and Grind is all about these lessons, these observations, the way you get to know yourself. Challenge. So I love that. Share any of those things that happened for you today. I think I'm going to need to take a peek through the group for future calls before we jump on so I can see what's been going on, because I went straight from my work day here. So I've been tunnel visioned in other things. So I saw the post from this morning and from yesterday, which was already awesome. And then, yes. Okay, so, oh no, I'm buffering already. That's not cool. Let me check my Wi-Fi connection. Okay, at least I'm on my correct Wi-Fi here. Let me know if it's any better before I dive into the profound thoughts. It seems all good from my end. There's nothing telling me there's a problem, so okay. Hopefully we are all good. Seems to be okay now. Could be the weather. Yes, that's true. It is storming outside, and that's actually tied in to my Grace and Grind from today. All right, let me read through some of these comments. I love this. Oh, I love it, Kim. I so appreciate you modeling and allowing us to commit to practicing intentional good habits. That is what this whole thing is about, is intention. Setting intentions and then being intentional and then being mindful throughout our day so that we don't, the thing that drives me crazy about challenges, and I said this in the intro details video about the Grace and Grind, and why I wanted this to be different, is that we think that everything has to be perfect in our lives. Like, oh, I've got that checked off, and I've got that checked off, and I've got that checked off, and now I can focus on my health and fitness. And then the minute something else crops up somewhere else in our lives, it all goes to hell, because we cannot balance our health and fitness with other important things in our life. And the thing is, if we keep doing that, if we keep living our lives that way, one day we will find ourselves in a hospital bed, unable to focus on anything but our health. So this is one of those things that's all about, how am I being intentional about my time? How am I being mindful about what I'm doing and not doing, so that I don't wake up one day and say, oops, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, it's been 5 years, and I never focused on my health. Because other stuff is always going to be coming up. So, ooh, I love this insight, Erin. I feel like it's making me more productive. Whenever I start doing silly stuff like scrolling on the phone, I catch myself. That is powerful, because once again, a lot of the time we say, I don't have time, right? I don't have time for fitness. I don't have time for nutrition. I don't have time to learn how to track macros or whatever it might be. But when we have a challenge where we've set out that here's these things I'm going to focus on each day, and we only have so many hours in the day, it's a good analogy for nutrition and fitness, but that's why I didn't put specific nutrition and fitness things into this, because I want it to be driven by what you care about, what's important to you. So when you pick those 4 or 5 things, and then you say, okay, this is what has to happen today, non-negotiable. What do I need to do to make that happen? What needs to be moved around? What needs to be reconfigured? And if I don't plan in advance, if I don't look at my day, if I'm not intentional, then it's not going to get done. And 9 times out of 10, that's the thing that stops clients from making progress when they first start working with me. Oh, I couldn't get all my protein in, or I ended up with a ton of fat left in my macros at the end of the day. And it was all because they weren't intentional at the start of the day or the night before, planning in advance to make it happen. So really, that's the underpinning of this entire challenge, is that if you're going to make these things a priority, and these 5 categories should be a priority in your life, then you have to figure out how to put them in priority order, put them front and center in your mind. And I have a very similar experience, Erin, with y'all. Some of y'all caught this when I posted my things in the group the other day, my non-negotiables. And in my self-care, one of the things I absolutely love that makes me smile like this is kitten videos on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. So kitten videos, cat videos, but specifically the kittens, they bring me so much joy and love, and I just get all warm and fuzzy inside. So allowing myself to indulge in those is part of my self-care. But you know what it's been doing the last couple of days is, when I do allow myself that, and I have that little giggle and that little smile to myself, and I feel the warm and fuzzies, I also am aware, well, I better not do this for an hour, because then I've lost an hour to it. So for me, it's intended as a break in my day, so that I make sure I'm taking little breaks from work throughout the day, so I don't just end up burned out by the end of the day, which I think a lot of you can probably resonate with that. You don't look up from your desk all day if you have a desk job. So that little piece of self-care has also built in some awareness. Oh, I'm glad I had that smile and I got that self-care, but also it needs to be within a healthy confine, which Julianne and I were chatting about in the app the other day. We're talking about, there's some things I love and I could geek out on them on YouTube all day, but I have to also be cognizant and make sure that it doesn't then detract from my wellness. So finding that balance, finding that sweet spot of allowing yourself those indulgences, those self-care items that are indulgent. And I love using the term indulgence to describe something that's not food. And hopefully that's another kind of surprise win that many of you get on this Grace and Grind journey, that oh, I'm discovering all these other things that bring me joy that are not food. So I don't have to turn to the food indulgence to feel like I'm indulging myself in the things that I love. Let's see, Kay says, mindset and growth is done. And if you can count by buying myself a candle at Marshall's pampering, then I did that too. I would say buying yourself a candle is absolutely self-care. And I love to see, this is the other piece, and I'm going to get into it in a minute, my insights from today. It makes you more aware of, oh, what did I do today? Like, how many times do we just sit down and scan our day at the end of the day or the beginning of the next day? And just think about our lives, think about what we've done and not done and how the day went. It's very rare that unless we're working with a coach that makes you do the weekly check-in, that we ever sit down and just reflect over our day or our week. So a lot of the time we discover things about ourselves. Oh, I could count that in that category, or I could count that in that category. And that stuff is really eye-opening. So that ties into this insight I had today that actually Blaze just commented, and this ties into it as well. I watch Tiny Kitten's YouTube live feed every day during my steps. So that is a perfect segue into what I was going to talk about today, which is one of the ways to have grace with yourself in this challenge and in general in life is that you can count some habits in your day, some of the things you do in your day, in more than one category. Or you could do some of them at the same time. So, for instance, this morning while I did my morning walk, because Bronson was knocked out, he has been doing this new training program and his body is telling him no. So he slept in this morning and I did not want to wake him. So I went up there by myself and I was walking on the treadmill as I normally do. And I have joined a challenge from a channel some of you are familiar with because one of you told me about it in the shred or the build, and it's called Doc Talks Detox. It's a tongue twister, but on Instagram. She's a doctor of chiropractic, and she is, her whole brand is about lymphatic drainage. And it's something I've been interested in for a while. So this morning, I was really excited. I joined her challenge so I could go through and learn about lymphatic drainage pathways and processes and practices. And so I went and listened to the first lesson this morning while I was on the treadmill. So while I'm on the treadmill, I'm listening to the lymphatic drainage lesson and I'm practicing it while I go. And I thought to myself, I'm getting my learning done. I'm doing the personal development part of the challenge while I'm also doing my movement, the movement part of my challenge, which is the morning walks. And I could actually count this as self-care as well, because I'm learning a practice that is literally, this is what we were doing. We were working on this part, the very first step. And that's something that's going to open up my my lymph system and help the lymph flow in my own body. So now this is also a self-care practice. So it could check a lot of boxes. So I'm saying all of this, and I think it's great timing that Juliana just hopped on because I know you had a lot of crazy stuff going on in your life the last few days. And I think this is the perfect example of sometimes the ish hits the fan in life. And we have all these emergencies and things we were not foreseeing that pop up. When you can look at something that you're doing already, which is what Mary Grace's post was all about in today's in the Facebook group today. That was her biggest aha moment last year was I wasn't giving myself credit for a lot of the things I was already doing. And there are things I do that check these categories off, these non-negotiables, and I need to count those things. I need to give myself credit for those things. And some of them can absolutely be in more than one area. So the last thing you need to do is be hard on yourself and say, at the end of the day, oh, I only did this one and this one, when really, if you reflect over your day and you kind of do a scan over your day, I bet you could check more than just those two boxes. So You could do the multitasking, some of them that are easier to multitask with, like walking on the treadmill doesn't take a lot of my focus and attention. So I can do a lesson at the same time and learn something, right? Um, Liz just said, doing my pelvic floor exercises while listening to you. Great example. Movement and learning, or maybe she could call this self-care. There's a lot of different things, or mindset. You call this part of your mindset work, right? So I love finding those synergies where you can say, this is more than one, and I get to count it. So don't be too hard on yourself saying, oh, it has to be 5 separate individual things every day. Or as I shared in the group yesterday about what my plans were, I said, well, a lot of my lists, the top 2 to 3 in each category, are things I already do. But the challenge part of it is that I want to improve upon those things that I'm already doing. So I've had a morning meditation practice for a very long time, but it hasn't been optimized for a very long time. I've kind of been letting myself slide on it and getting distracted and doing other things. So I'm allowing this challenge to be a time to dive back into more deeply on some of the things that I've committed to a long time ago. That may be a habit, but it's certainly not an optimized habit. So that's another thing. You don't have to say, okay, I have to have a bunch of new things that I'm doing to make this challenging. You can say, well, what am I already doing that I'd like to make a little bit more challenging? And so I can just lean into that rather than finding more arbitrary things to add to the list. And for many of you in the academy who have a training program, leaning into the training program and saying, okay, have I been lifting the weights that I think I can lift, or could I do more? I can't remember if is Kim on here? I think Kim was on here. Yep. Yeah, Kim was on here. And I'm going to share this with you tomorrow on the feedback video for the academy. But I know Kim has been thinking about stepping up from the beginner intermediate program to the intermediate advanced program in the academy. And so I'm going to nudge you right there, Kim. I think that's a great part of your movement challenge, that would be it. You don't have to add anything new, but you could say, you know what? I'm going to take the leap into the more advanced program because I think I'm ready. So that's a great example of how you could do that. So look at the things you already do. One of the things I talk about when you're setting goals for the new year or the new quarter or whatever it might be in life is to make a start, stop, and continue list. Look at all the things that you want to start doing in your life that are not already a practice, and brainstorm a list. And then whittle it down to like 1 or 2 or 3 things, not 10. Make a list of all the things you're already doing that you would like to stop doing because they are not helping you be what you want to be and live the life you want to live. Clearing out some of those things will make room for some of the new things. So you're not having to add a bunch of new things, but still do these things that are really not moving the needle or helping you in any way and detracting from your wellness and your quality of life. And then make a list of things you're already doing that you want to continue doing. You're like, these things are great. These need to stay. And for this particular challenge, or really any time, you can say, my continue list could be my new list also, because if there are things in my continue list that are not optimized, for me, it's the meditation, that was a big one, then, oh, okay, I can lean into that and get a little bit better at the things I'm already doing. So there's a little homework you could work on this week. Start, stop, and continue. And use that to kind of bolster and support your commitments in the challenge. You may get some new ideas for some of those categories. Juliana made a great post in the group today about how, she said, I'm so glad you encouraged me to write more than one thing in each category. Because look, things shift and change, right? Day to day, week to week. We may not know what's going to come at us. So if you have these 5 non-negotiables that are set in stone and it's only these very specific things, like in the 75 hard challenge or something like that, they're arbitrary and they're not movable. and then you failed because you didn't do one of them, when really you could have just shifted to another thing that's meant for the same purpose. And so, kind of the overarching concept here is the thing I always talk about, being the CEO of your body, not letting someone outside of you say, well, this is how I do it, so this is how you have to do it. And getting in touch with, what do I need in this moment? What is going to be best for me today? So, for instance, for my self-care today, yes, I did my kitten video interludes throughout my workday, but instead of training today, because my body is very tired, I already did my morning movement, so the movement is done. I'm going to take a nice hot shower before bed, or maybe even a bath, to support what my body needs. And that's going to be my self-care tonight. So you can think, if you have your list, you brainstormed your list, you now have a journal. If you didn't know, if you're in the Facebook group, there is a journal in there that you can save as a PDF or print out and use for writing things. But keep those lists going. Allow yourself to continue to be creative and think about more and more things that would check the box on those categories, so you always have something to go to and you don't feel stuck with just the one or two things you wrote down on the first day. Oh, wow. Mary learned how to wire and prime a Carlin burner control and furnace. Definitely a big learning curve this week. Is the furnace running? Hopefully, finally. So the other thing, on the flip side, so I love throwing things at you that are like, well, you could do it this way, or think about the exact opposite, right? So here's an idea that could be a self-care item, or maybe even a mindset item. Definitely, I would probably put it in the self-care category. And it's called single tasking. We've all heard of multitasking. I mentioned it earlier. That was where I was coming from with you can do your movement and do your personal development at the same time, right? But I can tell you something that I was not aware of for a long time, until I don't remember what even brought it to my attention. But I recognized that throughout my day, I'm a lover of learning. I would love to spend all my time all day long learning something. So for many years, I would constantly have a YouTube video or a podcast or an audiobook going in my ears while I'm doing everything else, cooking and driving. And oh my gosh, I would have conversations with friends while I'm driving, because I didn't want to spend separate time doing things individually. And the truth was, it was causing a lot of internal stress in my mind, emotionally, mentally. And what that does, it manifests in your body. And you may not realize, when you're dealing with low energy, aches and pains, that it actually may be connected to your mental and emotional wellness. So the multitasking, I'm sure some of you have heard the science behind it, is that we don't actually do anything well when we're multitasking. We can't actually multitask. Our brains do not actually multitask. They are actually shifting and switching from one thing to the other when we're multitasking. So they're not focusing on one thing or the other. They're constantly back and forth. And there's some cool, if you're a Huberman fan like I am, you can dive into some of that science about how long it actually takes for your brain to shift and switch focus, and that is not doing us any favors. So multitasking on some of these could be beneficial if it's something that doesn't take your attention at all, like a very repetitive, like walking on a treadmill, right? And actually, I would prefer biking, like a stationary bike would actually be even better, because even walking on a treadmill or walking outside or walking in general, your body can get into these postures that are not, you're not holding your core, you're not walking with proper posture. And then all of a sudden you end up more sore and your body is imbalanced and you notice aches and pains from walking. This is why I encourage a lot of the time not to do like really long walks, rather split them up and do shorter sessions if walking is going to be your preferred movement or cardio activity. So even walking, I wouldn't say would be the best example of something you could really do well and doing two things at the same time. So I love the concept for your self-care to challenge yourself to single task some things, particularly the learning, the personal development stuff. Because I can promise you, all of those things I listened to while I was doing other things over the years, I retained very little of that information. And I always got frustrated with like the courses and the certifications that I took that made you read, because I was like, oh, I'd rather just listen to it on a video. But the truth is, I was halfway paying attention to most of those videos, and I needed the reading. I needed to sit down and read and study and take some notes, and then I can really receive the information, internalize it, and they say until you can teach it to someone else, you don't actually know it. So this is why on the first video, the details about the challenge, I encourage you to reflect over, when you reflect over your previous day, you said, what did I learn? Not just what did I learn? I learned about lymphatic drainage. Okay, what did I learn about lymphatic drainage? Can you recall the information that you learned? Would you be able to explain it to somebody else? So I learned this morning that the first area you should always start with for lymphatic drainage, in case anybody wanted to learn this stuff, if you lift up your shoulders and you kind of lean forward like this, it's this part in between your collarbone and your traps and your throat. So inside here, this little triangle, those are your termini or termini. And that this is always the place you start with lymphatic drainage. You start here. The other thing I learned is that you don't want to use a lot of pressure. It's not like massage. She said, take these two fingers, because it's not as, you put a little bit more pressure when you use your pointer finger, and practice on your eyeballs, because your eyeballs are sensitive and you're not going to push too hard when you're pushing on your eyeballs. So only as softly as you would push on your eyeballs is how you use the techniques on your lymph nodes, because your lymph nodes are sensitive. So if I couldn't share that with you just now, if all I said was, I learned some cool stuff about lymphatic drainage, we started with the first place that you start, and I couldn't name it, I couldn't tell you where it is, and I couldn't tell you how you're supposed to do it, then I didn't actually learn anything. So even though I was multitasking on that one, I was able to retain the information. And that's a good tip to ask yourself, okay, did I do that well? Was that a good multitask? Or should I really try to single task this thing? For instance, when I'm doing my studying for my next certification, I need to sit down in front of my computer. I need to watch the intro video. I need to read the chapter and likely take some notes to be prepared for the quiz or the chapter test, so I can really retain and utilize that information in the future, rather than skimming or listening to it while I'm doing something else. So that could be a real challenge for people to actually single task. But you might be surprised that if you take that challenge, at how much more calm and peaceful you feel, and how that stress level in your body dissipates, because you're not asking your brain to do so many things at the same time all the time. And the same thing can be said with if you tend to do things with the TV on or with the radio on or with music playing or something always going in the background, that's noise, and it's actually driving your brain to try to pay attention to more than one thing. So silence. Silence can feel very uncomfortable if you're not used to it, but it can also be really freeing and powerful to actually allow the silence, and then you can hear yourself think, and you can be present with what might be coming up in your mind, which is one of the things I encourage a lot with those who struggle with food, with addictions, with binge eating, that until we really start to get quiet and listen to what our mind is saying to us, we are not fully aware and present with what is going on in those situations when we turn to food and we end up binging. It's usually that we are checked out and we're not paying attention to what's going on up here. So, yes, Juliana, reading versus listening, exactly. Sitting down and reading a physical book and not letting your mind wander, right? That's my challenge with the meditation. I would sit down, and I do like to put on meditation music. It actually does help. It's very calming and very quiet. But I've also played with just letting it be silent. This morning with the rain coming down, it was very therapeutic to be able to listen to the raindrops and then tune into my body and do a body scan. That's how I've been doing my meditations the last few days, to allow myself to stop wandering the mind. So here's another little mini lesson. For anybody who's ever struggled with meditation, you want to do it, but you're like, I just can't quiet my mind. My little trick is, it's called a body scan. It's a way of getting into your body and feeling the sensations of the body. It's also known as somatic experiencing. Can really help with anxiety and things of that nature too. You're kind of grounding into the reality, the real here and now, what you're physically present to. So I noticed a couple of days ago, starting the challenge, that, yep, I'm doing that distraction thing again. And I don't want to end up getting on my social media and then my meditation time turned into content creation time or something else. We're scrolling or looking at kitten videos. That's not the time to get into the kittens. So I just sat there and allowed myself to think and notice, not really think, but just notice, be aware of what I was feeling in my body. So I was sitting in kind of what should have been a comfortable position, but I was kind of slouching and I was feeling certain things. And so I challenged myself to not move and get into a more comfortable position. And instead, I sat there and I named off every little thing I was noticing that was kind of bothering me that I normally would have wanted to get up and fix. So I was like, oh, my bra is kind of tight around my rib cage. My back is tense on the right upper side. I have an itch. Like, it was all these things, and it was so powerful. I was like, oh, my toes are cold, although my legs are starting to warm up. And that's all it is. Yeah, Erin says body scans can totally put me to sleep if I'm struggling to sleep. And there's an even more powerful one you can do specifically for sleep, which I should mention in the academy tomorrow because I know somebody is struggling with that. But you could do it many different ways. Like most things, there's not really a wrong way to do it. You could start at the top of your head and kind of scan your body and go all the way down. Head, neck, shoulders, arms, torso, abdomen, legs, feet, and just notice what you're feeling. Or you can do it the way I did it, which is kind of like that popcorn. Okay, what am I feeling anywhere? What am I noticing next? What am I noticing now? What am I noticing after that? And then the sleep one that is really powerful, I've done in a lot of dance classes and yoga classes and things of that nature, is when you actually allow yourself to tense up the area and then release it. And you do that for each area. So you would start at the top of your head and go all the way down. Maybe it's like scrunching up your eyes, scrunching up your nose, scrunching up your mouth, tensing your shoulders, and just going all the way down. So you tense up, hold it for a second or two, and then release, and then do that all the way down your body. It is very, very relaxing. Oh, I love this. Who's tutus and toes? Who is this? I love that, by the way. Super cute. Ballerina, maybe? A fellow dancer? It says, silent driving is hard at first. Over time, it is magical. I agree 100%. That was a big game changer back when I had a very long commute. When I was getting really into my faith in the church, I started doing Hail Marys on my way to work. I started doing, no, it wasn't just Hail Marys. It was the whole rosary. I never, my entire life, had ever spent time doing the rosary. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the rosary on my way to work. And so I turned off the radio, which I'd always had the radio or some kind of podcast on. And I would go through the rosary in my mind in silence on the way to work. And it usually would get me there. It was like the perfect distance and the perfect amount of time to do the whole thing. So that's how it started. And then I noticed how much I enjoyed the silent time. So then when I stopped doing the rosary, I just allowed the silence to continue. And I had the most epiphanies, the most observations and awarenesses and revelations in my life on those drives. I actually missed those drives when I stopped commuting. And that, it's also kind of a beautiful thing where you can recognize the gratitude and the appreciation you can have for certain things in your life that you may not notice when you have them. And then when you don't have them anymore, you can go back and think back at them with appreciation. Those long commutes were annoyances to me for a long time, but boy, they were a blessing in disguise. Yes, Kaya says, when I can't sleep, I tell myself to relax each body part, starting with my feet. It seems like as soon as I relax my head and neck, I'm out. Yep. And she said, I seldom listen to anything in the car anymore. Yeah, it's a powerful time to be with ourselves. That's what it is. We're being with ourselves. 9 times out of 10, all of those issues we had with food were because we were not being with ourselves. We had no concept of what we were even thinking, what was going on inside. There were emotions that were being unrecognized, needs that were being unmet because we weren't even verbalizing them to ourselves in our head. That time, silent time with yourself, whether it's on the couch, in the car, on the treadmill, anywhere, is powerful because as long as you are silent long enough, things are going to start coming up for you. And this is where, when we don't run from them by turning to food or Netflix or other addictions, and we lean into them, that's where all the answers are. I often say the only way out is through, and that's what that is, being with yourself. Oh, I love that, Kim. She said, I realized when my son was younger, if we traveled in silence, he talked more. I learned a lot during those drives. Yeah, that's beautiful. I also saw somewhere that somebody was giving advice, parenting advice, and they said, when you're on a drive with your child in the back seat, it's a great time to ask them questions, and particularly about any kind of sensitive subject, because the fact that you're not sitting face to face, that they have that little bit of separation from you, a lot of the time makes them more comfortable opening up. So I bet a lot of that was happening. They feel comfortable. They feel, it's almost kind of like, being behind a computer screen. It's a lot easier to share when you're writing and you don't have to sit and look somebody in the eye. So yeah, that's powerful. I thought that might be you, Tori. tutus and toes. I was like, it's gotta be Tori, my resident dancer. I love it. It's so cute. Oh, Mary, you're gonna make me cry. She said, I started massaging my husband's back in the AM silently. It is magical. Ah, that sounds amazing. That's connection. That's the other thing too, is the intimacy. Intimacy is so important. Bronson and I have talked about the fact that we need to actually do a talk about sex, about intimacy, about passion in your relationship. And because it's something that doesn't get talked about much. And in our space, nobody's talking about relationships. They talk about health and fitness all the time, right? Nutrition and fitness. But that is such a powerful thing. Having intimacy, whether it's with your partner, with yourself, giving yourself love, your children, your pets. Intimacy comes in so much more than just sex. Hugs, touch, human connection. How many of us were separated from everyone in 2020 and discovered how much more important that was to us than we thought it was? I was that independent woman. I don't need anybody. I would live on an island by myself in 2019. 2020 hit, and that's when all my issues came to the forefront because I was not used to being with myself and only myself. I didn't realize and recognize how much I needed human connection. And that touch is so important. Yes, Mary, the nonverbal communication is so important. Exactly. That the intimacy of just sitting and being with someone, even if you're not touching, sitting and being with someone, having their presence, not sitting and watching TV together. That's not intimacy. That's not real connection. I was watching a show, one of my guilty pleasures are these terrible, terrible reality shows. Couples type reality shows, like the one I was watching was one of the marriage ones. What's it called? Married at First Sight. Yeah, I think it's the Married at First Sight one. And it's a total guilty pleasure. Total vice. Not the blind one, but that's my other one. I actually like that one even better. The one where they meet in the pods. Yeah, the blind. Love is Blind. I love that one. But this one is a little more frustrating because a lot of the time, this Married at First Sight, it's these people who sign up to marry someone, and then over the course of however many weeks they do the show, by the end they have to decide whether they're going to stay married or get a divorce. It's terrible. The whole premise is terrible. Bronson always laughs at me when I pull it up again. He's like, I can't believe you're watching that. But so you have a lot of the time people who have real issues they haven't dealt with, and they think they're going to go on this show and like write down all the things they want and get their dream person, and then it's a harsh reality. So it's always interesting and usually quite frustrating to watch them flounder over these weeks and deal with actually being in a real relationship and having to try to make it work. And so the reason I bring that up is because this one couple who had been struggling, they had a spark on the wedding day when they first saw each other. They were attracted to each other, and it was cool. And then they got into it and they lost that, and they were kind of falling apart already in the first few weeks. I love it. Nicole says, I call it part of my trash TV collection. Exactly. Yep. Hey, know thyself, right? As long as I'm not binging it, it's cool. I'll let it be some of my self-care sometimes. So it is a good laugh, and it usually makes me feel pretty darn appreciative of what I have. I always tell Bronson, I love what we have whenever I'm done watching one of those. The perspective is everything. So this one couple, they're sitting down. It was a tantric yoga session that they did. They did this tantric yoga, and so it had them sit, and like they were massaging each other, and they were doing all these different postures. But they talked about how powerful it was that they were just sitting together, looking at each other without speaking, and like actually looking in each other's eyes, and the power of that and how it actually brought them closer together, because they had been arguing so much. They've been using their mouths to argue back and forth. And this was them just being with each other. And this was actually a practice we did on some of the retreats that I've been on, that were all about um, trauma releasing. And you had to develop a very close uh, bond with the people that you were there on the retreat with very, very soon. So on the very first night, we did these practices that were meant to make you feel connected and comfortable with the people that you were there with. And one of those was an exercise where we would walk around the room, and then you'd stop in front of a person, kind of like musical chairs. When the music stopped, you'd stop in front of a person, and then that would be the partner that you would practice the next exercise with. And the very first exercise was literally just standing there and looking into each other's eyes without saying anything. And you had to do it for like a minute. It was really uncomfortable at first. You wanted to look away, you wanted to laugh or make some kind of a statement, and you were not allowed to. And then slowly, over that 60 seconds, you find yourself like connecting with this person. And then we moved on to all these other activities that would be like, you get to say one thing to them and you don't get to say anything else. And it was really powerful. So these things can be amazing, just having the presence. It's the presence. It's the feeling seen, feeling loved, feeling cared for. And that ultimately is what self-care is all about. So it doesn't have to be the candles and the bath and the massage and the hair salon. It could be being with yourself. It could be setting an alarm for 5 minutes and saying, I'm going to be with myself for 5 minutes, whatever thoughts come up. And I'm going to practice not judging any of those thoughts, just observing them and letting them be whatever they are, whatever I'm feeling, noticing what comes up for you. Oh, Deb, I love this. I learned I need to be home more. Life has got so chaotic and I needed downtime. That's the thing. So many of us just go through life and don't realize how important that is and how much we need it. And honestly, on your health and fitness journey, and I know this was a thing with Deb, it was like a frustration of like, I'm not making the progress I want to make. I'm certain that had a huge part to do with it, because that stress level of not letting our bodies get into the rest and digest, the parasympathetic state, that is going to just kill your progress in its tracks. So that's what most of this challenge is about, is giving yourself more of that. How do I give myself more of my time back? And then what needs to go? Make your start, stop, and continue list and look at where you can trim the fat of your life. What is taking up time in my day and in my week that really doesn't need to be there, that I can replace that time with something that's valuable to me instead? Ooh, Erin's giving me another idea for another. Watch Indian Matchmaker. Ooh, I'll put that on my list. I like it. I love the matchmaking stuff. You know what? I love love. So a lot of the time on those shows, even though there's a lot of drama and a lot of things don't work out, I'm always watching for the love story. I want to see people fall in love. And that is everything. The married at first sight, when one or two couples make it and they're really in love, like I just love that. It just warms my heart. I try to tune out to a lot of the drama part of it. All right. Does anybody else have any insights from the first couple of days of the challenge? Anything you've already discovered, you may need to shift some priorities around? Or any interesting things you put on your lists? Deb says some of my work. LOL. Yep. Shifting that, getting that out. Yep. I'm here for that. Cosign. Liz is with me on the sappy love stories. Yeah. Oh, Deb, I love it. I've dropped a client so I can take time for me. I truly believe you will be blessed for it. Sometimes, a lot of the time when it's work related, we feel like, well, we have to be doing that, right? We feel this pressure. But I truly believe that God, the universe, whatever you believe in, it returns that energy you put out there. So if you're like, you know what, I'm worth taking care of me, then I believe I will be supported when I take the sleep because this is how I need to support myself. And then you're telling the universe, you care about yourself. And then the universe shows you care and gives it back to you and brings it back to you. As an entrepreneur, I have a lot of months I'm worried about the next month. How am I going to do this again? How am I going to be okay next month? Do I need to grind to make this happen? And you all are living proof that when I don't stress over it and I just put myself out there and I give value because I'm thinking about the people I want to serve, the universe brings me the right people, and that's you all. And then I'm okay, and then I can survive another month. And I didn't have to grind and do all these crazy transactional ads and cold DMing people to try to get clients. It's just give good out into the world, and I truly believe it will come back to you in spades. So Deb, I believe it's coming back to you, baby. Ooh, Juliana, I like it. I shifted my mile a day to 7 miles in 7 days. That's beautiful. So now you're giving yourself that grace, that flexibility to say it doesn't have to happen like this every single day. I'm thrilled that you made that decision. Love that. Erin says, I'm discovering how much I love the motivational podcasts. The Rob Dial ones are great. I saw your video on YouTube with your insight about the one you saw where he said, he was talking about doing the thing. And that you can write it down and you can tell all these people and you can make your plans. But if you don't do the thing, you're not actually doing anything. You're not making progress. You're not moving forward. I love that. So taking action, so powerful. You got me interested. Now I want to go listen to it. And that's another cool thing. Another thing that I love about this challenge I'm seeing in the group, there's so many things I didn't know existed out there in the world. So when you all are sharing what you're doing, the podcasts you're discovering, the books you're reading, I'm like, yes, let me add that to the list, right? It doesn't all have to be done now, but I have a book list I've been building for years of, I'll never run out of ideas for books I want to read or podcasts to listen to. So I love the sharing that's happening in there, giving people ideas. Oh, this insight was so beautiful, Mary. And I don't remember if you shared it in the Facebook group or the Academy, but I'm glad you're sharing it here because it was profound and I think so important. She said, I found that my choice to put myself first needed to be pulled back as I was too black and white. I needed to remember her husband suffers from his brain injury. So more love for him, basically saying she needs to show him more love so he doesn't feel abandoned. So she's learning that gray area between being black and white, all or nothing. She was gung-ho. Okay, me first, right? That means all of my stuff and forget about him. He can deal with it himself. And this was a beautiful reminder that, yes, we need to fill our cup. But why are we filling our cup? So that we have enough to overflow to others. Because we don't live in this world alone. We're not in a vacuum. And there are other people who are important to us that also deserve our love and our time. It shouldn't be to the detriment of our own well-being, but we also don't want to be all about ourselves and let everybody else completely go, right? That's really powerful. I don't live near my family anymore, so it's that much more important that I have that conversation with my mom regularly because she's not going to see me and we're not going to spend time like we used to. And sometimes I get really busy, like this last week, launching the academy and then the challenge. But we were texting, so she knew, I'm not going to be able to talk this week, but we'll talk. We'll talk. And then we finally got to chat yesterday. So we can't forget about the people in our lives that mean something to us just because in the name of taking care of ourselves, right? It's part of what this whole grace and grind thing is about. How can we do both? Because you mothers out there, you can't just say, forget about your baby. Let me go take care of myself, right? Kids still needs to get fed and dressed and cleaned up after, and they need love. And so you have to be, but you also don't want to be like, forget me, because it's all about my kid. Maybe if you have a newborn, you do have to do that for a little while. But ideally, you're also allowing yourself to shower and do the important things you need to do for yourself. So this is all about, let's play in the gray so that we can take care of ourselves while we also take care of the other things that are important in our lives. Love this, Karen. Yes. Cutting back my protein beverages and more ready protein, real food protein. I love that for your nourishment goal. What are some of y'all's nourishment challenge items? Mary Grace says, my dad has always said the only difference between doing it and not doing it is doing it. I love it. More and more evidence that I need to meet this man. I can't wait to meet your dad. Liz says, got up early this morning to take kids to the airport, hit a David Goggins 5-minute motivation. By the time he was finished, I was wired. The ones right now that have been hitting my feed on YouTube are the David Goggins on Andrew Huberman, and they've split them up into segments. So there was one I saw about what he had to do to learn because he was not a good student, and how much intense focused effort it took for him to learn something. So I was like, oh, one day I'm learning about learning. That's part of my personal development. And then the one this morning that popped up on my feed was about motivation. So I bet that might have been the same thing you were listening to. It was a short one. That's pretty cool. Yeah, he's got a way of hitting you. Oh, Juliana said I called Mama this AM on the way to work. I bet she loved that. I noticed a lot of us are working on increasing water intake. That's something Kim mentioned. Yes, that's something that can easily go by the wayside if you don't have it at the ready. I still can't drink mine without electrolytes, without flavor. I have now, for so many years, been drinking my water with electrolytes, with flavored electrolytes, that when I don't have them, I have noticed I've drank more water. I've drank, sounds so weird. Anyway, more water the last couple of days because I switched back to all LMNT because we ran out of salty and we ran out of Relight, and we didn't reorder Relight. We have salty coming. I think it got delivered just now, actually. So I was mixing and matching salty and LMNT for a little while, but now I've gone back to all LMNT, and I am killing the water the last couple of days. Mary Grace also listened to the same podcast, the Huberman and Goggins. I haven't listened to the whole thing. I bet there's a lot in there that they covered. Kim says, this Eastern Kentucky girl is too attached to the Diet Mountain Dew, giving that up slowly. Oh, girl, yes. Keep doing. I think I gave you the tip a while back to slowly move from how many you're having to like one, cut down by one, cut down slowly but surely, a little bit at a time. Keep the water next to the Mountain Dew. So sip one, now you gotta sip the other. It's one thing I used to do when I was still drinking alcohol. I'd have a sip of water for every sip of alcohol to keep from getting too drunk when I was out. Ooh, more nourishment stuff. Karen upped her protein and lowered fat macros. Whoop, whoop. I can feel the fat loss happening, baby. Blaze says, I took out stevia and I'm trying to find flavor drops without stevia. Not easy. Oh boy. Anybody in the group? Drop that in the group, Blaze, and see if anybody has any recommendations. Sometimes people hear about things that other people don't. I've never found a flavor drop that I like to save my life. If you're not too picky about fruit, about carnivore, that you couldn't do citrus fruit, then I would say you could just squeeze some lemon or lime in your water. If you don't have a problem with citrus, that may be something more natural you could do to not have to worry about using flavor drops. Erin says, I'm trying to plan ahead to keep my macros more on track. Works well until I realize my husband ate my food. Oh no, that is fighting words. Ouch. Yeah, you're going to have to label your stuff. Do not eat. This is Erin's. There will be consequences and repercussions. That is no bueno around here. Mary says, no carb smart ice cream. And no stevia. Okay, I like it. Yeah, my rule with ice cream is protein ice cream is basically all I allow myself. Very, very rarely when I am having, like not right now because I'm carnivore again, but when I had higher carbs, I would allow myself from time to time, maybe once a month, usually less than that. I might try a new low carb, dairy free ice cream that I would find at a grocery store. But I will tell you, to this day, there's not a single brand that I have found out there that is actually really decent. They usually have to put a bunch of junk in there to try to make it into something when it's not. For those of you who eat dairy, I know it's different, but for the dairy free people out there, the ice creams on the market are either loaded with sugar or they have to put so much other garbage in there, plant proteins and gums and stabilizers and additives just to try to make it into an ice cream that is not even worth it. So I gave up a long time ago, and every once in a blue moon, I might find something out there that looks interesting that I want to, okay, maybe I'll give this one a try. Recently, there was one that I found that I'd never seen before, and now I forget what the brand was, but it only had like 5 ingredients, and it was all clean, real food ingredients, but they used dates. So the sugar was a little high, and I hate dates, so it really kind of ruined it for me. It was a banana-based one, so not going to work on keto or carnivore anyway, but I just make my own protein ice cream if I'm really wanting the ice cream. I pretty much phased out all of my creamies that I had prepared in the freezer, getting ready to go carnivore again. And part of my nutrition challenge or nourishment challenge is to have less than a scoop of protein a day, 1 scoop or less in a day. I've been doing less than 1, which would then mean no creamies, no protein ice creams. Honestly, the protein powder doesn't do me any favors in the digestion department. So I'm happy to let that go. I'm not really feeling very attached to it right now. So leaning into the carnivore thing. And so far, I'm already feeling better after probably only a few days of full on carnivore, but like a whole week of transitioning to carnivore. And I already feel a lot better in my body. Liz has her own shelf in the fridge. Eat my food at your peril. Yes, I love that. Yep, Deb says the Zilch ice cream here is full of so much sweeteners and added fiber that it's not even close to low carb. Yeah, and then it's going to cause like all this digestive issues. yeah, it's not even worth it at this point, in my opinion. So, yep, leaning into the real food myself over the next 21 days. Eventually, I want to wean off of everything but not just carnivore, but everything but eventually go lion again, and then do a full-on food reintroduction protocol, and being very strategic with it to hopefully fully heal and seal my gut. So I'll take y'all on that journey with me when I get ready to do that. Yep, Karen says that we love Equip ice cream. I've been cutting way back on them. Yeah, good call. Good call. As much as I love them, look, it'll always be there. I figure, hey, if I am on point, eating real food, leaning into the real food, and not doing the protein powder on a regular basis, if I have a hankering for some ice cream in a couple of weeks, in a month, then I'll make some again. But I'd much rather manage it that way than have it be a regular occurrence, which it can be. It can tend to get to that when I start doing it. Then I want to do it more regularly, and that may be fine. But when you have certain goals and you want to focus on them, it's not generally going to be a detrimental thing for fat loss goals, muscle gain goals, things like that, but health goals in particular, and specifically like digestion and stuff like that. If you have gut issues and things of that nature, it may be helpful to take out. They are still processed food, if you will, supplement, right? So, yeah. All right. I guess on that note, let's sign off for the night so I can go make some real food for dinner. I think I'm going to make my favorite half-pound burger on Egglife Wraps. Egglife Wraps are one of the only non-fully carnivore foods that I'm consuming right now. They are just egg whites, and I think they use xanthan gum, but it's a minor thing. So right now I'm carnivore plus coffee and Egglife Wraps. And avocado mayo and mustard. That's basically the extent. So it's all good. That's the other thing. Y'all, you get to determine your carnivore, your keto, your diet, the way that you eat, because diet really just means, in case you haven't heard this before, it really just means way of living. It's not even really way of eating. It's way of living is the original Greek origin of the word diet. So it's not about being on a diet. We're following some label of a diet. You get to make your own diet. I'm on the Natalie diet. Ooh, Karen, great insight. With upping my protein, I don't have the desire for night treats. I love that. Yes. That's another thing, another minor thing that I've shifted is eating my last meal earlier at night so that I can fully digest and get better sleep at night. So you can look at these challenges can be so much more than what you're eating and what you're not eating, but what time of day you're eating, how many meals per day you're eating, how large your meals are. There's so many other things you can look at beyond just the foods themselves. And that reminds me, we can either talk about this next week or I was thinking about doing a masterclass on it. That when we talk about eating right, it's not just about what you're eating, but it's about how you're eating. And a lot of the time, if you have problems with digestion, IBS, bloating, gas, any of those kinds of issues, they may not be specifically about what you're eating, but it may be about how you're eating. So we can get into that. We can talk about the vagus nerve and we can talk about all kinds of fun stuff there. So I'll put that on the list for a future masterclass. All right, ladies, have a wonderful night. I'm going to go grub and I will see y'all inside the Facebook group. Don't forget to keep posting and sharing how it's going for you. So far, so good. You're off to a really strong start. Super proud of you all.